I'll do a brief curmudgeonly commentary and point out, John, you were referencing the Declaration of Independence, sir.
Yes, it was.
That's right. And now, that's interesting, because the Declaration of Independence, and some people point this out, the difference, we talk about the Founding Fathers, right, and that sort of thing. Well, there's one group that signed the Declaration of Independence. They went to Philadelphia, that convention, and Jefferson wrote it. There were some changes made to it. He actually had some pretty strong anti-slavery language in it that they threw out. Something similar happened when George Mason wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights in May of 1776. Because George Mason said, well, how can we say that we're for all these things, that all men are created equal and have the same rights granted by God when we have slavery? And what's going on, So they had to figure out some rhetorical device that wasn't very satisfying to anyone, but they knew that if they didn't do that, they'd have a lot of people who wouldn't fight against the British. And Jefferson actually wanted to be much stronger on that issue, but nonetheless, the Declaration came out and it was not a legal document at that time. It was a political document, and each of the 13 states individually seceded, individually left the British Empire. They didn't leave as one. So sometimes people go, oh, July 4th, that's America's birthday. No, it's not. That was the day that they issued this proclamation. The reasons why each of the 13 states were going to leave the British Empire. They had originally passed the Lee Resolution 2 days before, and they said these 13 colonies are and of right ought to be 13 free and independent states with all the rights and duties attended thereto. So, and that never really changed, actually, at least not politically or legally. Even, they seceded from the British Empire. They then later came together in the Second Continental Congress with the Articles of Confederation, and it actually was a confederacy. America had a confederated form of government, very loose. So you had each of the 13 states. When the king signed the peace treaty after the War of Independence was won with the help of the French, he named each of the 13 states. Because again, and we've heard Chris Ann Hall say this, we know when she's been here, she mentions this, right? And so they had all the rights to do, but they said we're going to do a few things as a group, and that was originally in the Confederation. And then there was what Gary North, the Tea Party economist, Dr. Gary North, calls the coup in Philadelphia, all right? And Madison and Hamilton and some of the others, they wanted to have a stronger centralized government. They apparently were lying, or somebody was lying. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but I don't want to tar the wrong guy. He was a Knox. He was a great artillery officer in the war against the British. So he deserves credit there. But he was writing letters during Shays' Rebellion telling George Washington that people didn't want to pay their debts, people in Massachusetts, and that wasn't the case. What happened was that John Hancock had been the governor 2 terms in a row, and he was a Jeffersonian Republican. And then somebody from the Hamiltonian party went and became governor because Hancock didn't want to run again, he had the gout. And when they got in, they said, you know what, each of the states had issued debt to help finance the Revolutionary War, the War of Secession from the British Empire. That debt was trading at very, very low prices, pennies on the dollar. So they said, let's pass a law that says, for the honor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have to pay back all that debt at par in silver. But before we do that, let's send people out into the countryside to buy this paper really cheap from all the veterans and the widows and the shopkeepers and the farmers. I mean, really nasty business, right? And so that was what they tried to pull off, a huge scam. And Shays led this rebellion, and they didn't get away with it because Shays stopped it. But while he was doing this, it was misrepresented to George Washington. Everybody wanted Washington to go to Philadelphia to this. They'd had an Annapolis convention, but none of the people showed up. And they said, well, we just want to revise the Articles of Confederation. They really were trying something much more significant. Washington wouldn't go until finally these letters convinced him that he really needed to go. And he was the one guy everybody trusted. He tried to get Patrick Henry to go with him. Patrick Henry was on the other side of the argument. But he said, Henry, I need you there to be my guy telling me who's pulling a fast one, and because people trust you too, and I need you to, and Henry wouldn't go. And he made the famous comment, I smell a rat. Wow. They say I smell a rat in Philadelphia, but apparently he just said I smell a rat. So he wouldn't go. But Washington went to the Constitutional Convention. Madison tried to foist the Virginia Plan, which is a very centralized government. President for life, president appoints the senators, and the feds, this new federal, they said a new centralized government could nullify state laws. Didn't go anywhere. Nobody wanted that. Okay, Hamilton really wanted it, but they couldn't get it anywhere. So they went through, I think it was the New Jersey plan, they had the various compromises and that sort of thing, but it was still not one nation, but a federal union. And this is a very important point, because on Tough Talk with Taros, I think the next episode, or maybe the one after that, is going to address this very issue. What is the nature of American government? And you know, there was a socialist in 1892 named Francis Bellamy, a fake Christian minister. Sometimes you see people today, they well, so-and-so, Reverend so-and-so, and you wonder, well, what kind of reverend is he? Where did he get his degree? Okay, well, Bellamy was that kind of guy. He was a socialist. He had a cousin who had written a book, 2015, Looking Backward. I think that's the name of it, but that's, okay. And in the story, there's a Rip Van Winkle-like character that falls asleep in their day, wakes up like in the 21st century, and oh my gosh, we have a Soviet paradise, you know? So everything the Soviets said, okay, that's what this guy saw. Now, there was a flag manufacturer that wanted to sell flags. He went to Bellamy, and Bellamy wanted to promote the socialist agenda, him and his cousin, and so they wrote the rejection of the Declaration of Independence, which people recite. They make the school children recite it in school. They do it before almost we do it all at all the 9th District meetings. Now Michael Shalal's mad at me because I brought that up in that one post he had, Jeff. But also, you see this, all the scout meetings. What is the rejection of the Declaration of Independence?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen. And in fact, as the late and extremely great William N. Grigg pointed out, and he reminds us, and others have too, actually back in that day, there were people who for theological or spiritual reasons didn't want to see it, because allegiance comes from the French word liege or lord. And there are many people who say, you know, if you're really getting into the Bible, we're not supposed to be doing this biblically as Christians, you know. I mean, now different people, that's everybody's choice to make. But so there was that objection. And then there's indivisible. Are you kidding me? The Declaration is quite clear. And the actions of the patriots is quite clear. A tax jurisdiction or a political entity is divisible. That is the most fundamental American political principle. As the great Tom Woods says, the pledge is actually French. And friends don't let friends do something French by mistake. So you want to stop them. We may or may not want to see a division of but the government, whether it was the Confederation or it's the state government or the federal union, not national government, not one nation, but the federal union of nation states, these 50 states, these 50 united with a small United States, it's up to the people. What works best is to defend liberty. And Jefferson wrote that. That's in the Declaration, which, by the way, now is, interestingly enough, illegal. It's item number 1 in the United States Code, according to the great Judge Andrew Napolitano. How about a round of applause for Judge Napolitano? Don't you just love Judge Napolitano? Yeah. Amen, sister. And how about a round of applause for Tom Woods? He needs a round of applause, too. Darn right. Okay, but here's another important point. And people say, oh, you're going to bring this up? It's really fundamental. Because today, and Tom Woods makes another point, today many people who call themselves conservatives are actually working to defend and conserve things that the progressives did. The progressive agenda. And the Pledge of Allegiance is fundamental to that. That was a Trojan horse that those people did. And it was rotten. Now, Mike Meharry of the 10th Amendment Center just wrote a great piece. Because, you know, there's lately been, oh man, you talk about the history. We went to Gettysburg this year, the first time I went there. But you know what, you study about Robert E. Lee. You study about Stonewall Jackson. And everybody's got their faults, okay? Right. And you can find plenty there. And Meharry just wrote a great piece where he said, you know what, yeah, it was about slavery, but it was also about a lot of other things too. Yeah. And the war part was different than why they left. In the war, they were defending themselves from invasion. And the fact of the matter is, you cannot find an incident where more Americans over a larger piece of ground were done more damage than by one army in the 1860s. And which army was that? It's politically incorrect to say it, isn't it? But it's the truth. Okay? Jackson and Lee and Stuart, they were defending their home states. They were defending their very homes from invaders. They're all thinking, hey, you guys should have gotten rid of slavery. That was rotten stuff. But Lincoln said the war ain't about slavery. He said it in his first inaugural address, okay? So when they're tearing down these statues, and I don't know if they should have gone up or not, should there be taxpayer money, maybe for that, maybe not, but it's just, there's so much about this that people have forgotten. And so what we want to do, I would suggest, is be, you know, Thomas Jefferson without the bad stuff, even though Jefferson himself wanted to move against slavery, and that's a good thing on his part. Or like Lysander Spooner. But if we can just practice the golden rule and the non-aggression principle and tell these people, you know something? You're only there if you're in government to protect our liberty. We are not here to be your servants,
Yes.
to be your cannon fodder, to be your cash cows for your personal agenda. Our freedom, our liberty, and the liberty that was granted by God that we must protect and defend and pass on to our children is more important than your political agenda, your political office, or your so-called smart ideas. And that's what I say, ladies and gentlemen. If you agree with me, please present.